Start with the presentation.
Great, that looks great, Ashna.
Give me a minute. It does not look right on my end. Okay, how does it look good right now?
Yep, it does.
Fine, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us in the Bradley Beach Walkable Community follow-up workshop. So just some housekeeping notes before we start. By default, you are muted, but feel free to unmute yourself and jump in during the presentation to give any feedback and comments. Also use the chat box for any technical assistance and any suggestions or if you have any questions. And lastly, this presentation will be recorded for note-taking purposes and for providing to you after the meeting for any additional feedback and looking at it. Okay. So here is the agenda for today. We will start with a background of the project, move into introductions, and then quickly review the work audit. We'll spend most of this hour discussing the recommendations along the corridor and collecting your feedback. Once we got into this section of the presentation, as I said, we'll need you to unmute yourself and feel free to join in the conversation. You can also raise your hand or type your suggestions in the chat box. Now, a little bit about this project. This is the second year of the Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program, and it is funded by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, NJTPA. Last year, we worked with 9 communities, including those shown here in the bottom. This year, we are working with Bradley Beach and 7 other communities. From NJTPA, we have Peter Bilton with us on the call. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
First, I'd like to unmute myself. Hi, Peter Bilton, a principal planner with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. We're glad to sponsor this project for the second year to help towns figure out how to implement and go into the next steps to implement complete streets in their communities. The idea from this came out of this program came out of our Together North Jersey plan, which we work closely with the Voorhees Transportation Center and Sustainable Jersey at the College of New Jersey on. So we're glad that they can support this program. We're the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, so we help determine and prioritize funding for transportation across North Jersey, and work closely with state and regional partners and counties and towns to help them do planning and plan for better transportation. And I want to say hi and thank you to the representatives from the county planning office, from the New Jersey Department of Transportation, who are especially critical for this project, and to the Transportation Management Association Easy Ride, who have been participating on the calls for this project. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Also, we have Anne Heasley from Sustainable Jersey. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Anne Heasley from Sustainable Jersey, and really happy to help support this project. And I'll be sending you additional emails to the ones that you've already received after this call today to help facilitate additional participation. So thanks for joining us again today, and welcome to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I'm Ashna Jain from the Voorhees Transportation Center, and I also have my colleague James Sinclair with us here. James, would you like to introduce?
Good morning, everybody. Ashna said, James Sinclair, I also work at DTC. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you want to use that for your feedback or any questions, I'll let Ashna know that you put something in there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And as Peter mentioned, because Bradley Beach is also a state road, we also have Bill Revere from NJDOT with us on the call. Bill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Bill Revere with the Office of Safety, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Programs at NJDOT.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move forward. Now we want to get to know more about you. We would like if you go to the chat box and tell us your name, as shown in this example here, your name, how long have you lived in Bradley Beach, and how often do you walk around this area of Bradley Beach. Let's give it a minute here.
Okay, Ashna, if you want me to read, we have a few people posting. Latoya Howard, TJ Cohn, Fran Grosbeck, who's been here 11 years, swimming away. Belle Diginar, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, 4 years. Meredith DeMarco, 10-year resident, who's on the quarter daily. Latoya Howard is from Easy Ride. Christine Bell and Leon Avakin are the borough planner, does not live in Bradley Beach, but does walk around Main Street. Alan Gabitosi, council member, lives there for 14 years, walks daily. Liz Hernandez grew up in Bradley Beach, lives on Main Street. David Brown, second, borough administrator for 6 months, just walks around there all the time. For 40 years, once or twice a week. Zachary Paye, Easy Ride Bike and Pet Team. Linda Curtis has been 7-year full-time, 37 years on her own. Larry Fox, 15 years, walks often. Lisa Lee, also from Easy Ride, not often in Bradley Beach, but in Asbury Park, but did work on a street smart campaign. TJ Cohn has been there for 25 years as a property owner, walks there every day. Nick Kosarich, 4-year resident, 12-year seasonal renter. Precious Smith, Easy Ride Bike and Ride. Amy Hall from Department of Tourism. Ines Altamose, 21-year, walks several times a week. Paula Gavin, 30 years. And that's it so far.
That's perfect. Like we have a lot of residents and other people who walk around there all the time. So your feedback would be very much appreciated. Let's move forward. Yeah. So the first part of this workshop was conducted on July 21, 2020, in which the participants learned about complete streets improvements and then virtually walked the corridor. The study corridor includes Main Street, starting at Monmouth Avenue, where the Bradley Beach Recreation Center is, to Ocean Park Avenue. It is slightly longer than a half mile and includes critical destinations such as the Bradley Beach train station, Riley Park, connectivity to Bradley Beach Elementary School, and the businesses along the street. We had a great conversation during the walk audit discussing your observations and suggestions to improve safety and overall appearance along the street. We also received your comments through the online audit form and direct emails, which included 6 responses and photos. Today, we will discuss the recommendations addressing those findings. As we noted, because this is a state route, many of these recommendations would fall under the jurisdiction of NJDOT and would require the borough to work with the DOT. So we will start by discussing the bicycle infrastructure recommendations. Currently, Main Street is about 46 feet wide with shadows and parking on both sides. The driving lanes are quite wide, 15 feet in width. And participants noted in the walk audit how unsafe it feels to bike there, given the heavy traffic and also heavy vehicles. Given this width, as we also mentioned, Main Street does not have the space to accommodate bicycle lanes on both sides. In the first alternative, we propose creating a northbound bicycle lane on Main Street, as depicted in this section, and a southbound bicycle lane on Hammond Avenue. It will be important to provide safe cross connections between these two bicycle lanes through Ocean Park Ave, Lorraine Ave, Fifth Ave, and other roads. We also recommend that the town consider extending these connections to the shoreline, and beyond Ocean Park Avenue and Monmouth Avenue. So any thoughts or comments on this alternative and idea? Okay. Yeah.
Would Hammond Avenue have enough room to accommodate the bike lane with parking on both sides? It is a one-way.
Yeah, it does have the room to accommodate, I think, a 5 feet wide bicycle lane, which is enough. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, a later design would also cover it and show how it fits on that road. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, there's also another alternative, and if the town is interested in providing bike lanes on both sides, we propose removing parking on the southbound side, which is 70 parking spaces, to include a northbound and a southbound bicycle lane here. Some of these parking spaces would be recovered in the second and third Ave redesign that we will talk about later in the presentation.
I just had a question about the volume of bicycle traffic that you expect, and whether you think it wouldn't be, you apparently think it's not possible for bikes to pass each other, ever. And I'm just thinking that the volume might be low enough that passing another bicyclist might be infrequent enough that the bike lane could be two-way.
I don't like the width that we have for like a one bicycle lane here is the recommended width. And if we want to make it two-way, then for safety reasons and for enough space for like those infrequent passing to happen safely, I think there is like a minimum width that has to be there, which is not there on the road. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's a good question. Yeah. Okay, let's move forward. So this was like the basic bicycle recommendations, which will be for the entire corridor. Now we'll talk about some detailed recommendations for specific intersections, starting with Monmouth Avenue. Improvements along the Monmouth Avenue include painting ladder crosswalks on all sides so that like people who are coming from any direction can access the recreation center directly. Incorporating ADA compliant crosswalk ramps and truncated domes, adding curb extensions to reduce crossing distances and prevent dangerous parking near crosswalks, and improving visibility. Also utilizing this west curb extension for bike parking and other amenities. And the last recommendation is to look at opportunities to incorporate sidewalk art if the space in front of the recreation center comes under public right-of-way. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, feedback, things they like or don't like?
Looks amazing. I've been waiting like 15 years for this. So this is a great start. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and also note that this diagram shows how the bicycle lane would fit and bicycle intersection markings in the intersection. Yeah. So many of these recommendations that we shared here, like the crosswalks, curb ramps, and curb extensions, they are typical for unsignalized T-shaped intersection along the corridor, and hence they'll also apply to McCabe intersection that's down the corridor. And also we recommend that the town develops a standard design for the curb extensions to keep that consistent look and add to the look of the corridor. The left two images here are from the street design guidelines prepared for the city of Roanoke, Virginia, which aim to create a welcoming and attractive streets for all people. And talks about the design of each streetscape element in detail. The middle image here, this one, shows the retrofit option for reducing large turning radii. And the right image here shows the curb extension design covered in NACTO's Urban Street Design Guide. So the town could develop like a standard design that they could follow on every intersection where you have curb extensions. For Evergreen Avenue, which is a signalized intersection, only few minor changes have been added since according to the feedback. Many of these recommendations are typical for all signalized intersections along the corridor. So this would include 4th Avenue, Brindley, Larine, and Ocean Park Avenue. These recommendations include adding ladder crosswalks on all sides so that that consistency of look at intersections continues. Adding ADA compliant curb ramps and truncated domes, adjusting the signal timing to optimize delay time for both pedestrians and cars, and changing it to fixed timer if it is push button operated. Also consider curb extensions wherever you want to reduce crossing distances or there is a need to improve sight lines, and adding more greenery and more pedestrian amenities. Also, and the last one is providing adequate pedestrian scale lighting at intersections. I also want to note that during the walk audit, we talked about speed at intersections, and following through with the bicycle infrastructure recommendation that narrows down the existing 15 feet wide driving lanes to 11 feet will help with that concern. In addition to other elements like curb extensions. Narrowing down this width would still allow for existing use, but discourage speeding.
Ashna, in the comment, Lisa Lee just wants you to mention how the issue with the current truncated domes, since they're already there, and how they point people towards the center of the intersection.
Oh yeah, yeah, thank you. That's a good point. So the curb ramps and truncated domes, like they should orient in the right, like towards the crosswalk and orient in the right way. Yeah, definitely.
Ashna, there's a question about what a truncated dome is. So that's that strip.
Yes, yeah, we talked about truncated domes in the first meeting. This is like this red strip here, which is for like people dealing with visibility issues, and it kind of tells them that they are about to leave the the sidewalk and enter a crosswalk. Yeah.
And Ashna,
it's for blind people. For people who are blind, they use that little bumpy pad right there in the middle picture, and they use that to feel with their cane or their foot to direct them appropriately into the roadway. And the way that you see it is in that center picture, it will direct them to walk right into the middle of the intersection where they would be hit by a car. So it's really important that there should really ideally be 2 domes there, both one pointing them into the crosswalk that goes across the street in both directions. The way that is, it will direct them, and if they're not really aware of the geography and they're coming to visit your town, they would go right into the middle of the intersection and could be hit by a car. Yeah. So it's very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. And then Ashna, we have a question from Belle saying that if the bike lane reduces the lane width from 15 to 11 feet, if you add a curb extension, what are the lane widths?
The curb extensions would not affect the lane width. Okay, let me quickly go back to this diagram. As you can see, the bike lane reduces the lane width to 11 feet, but the curb extension, it extends into the parking lane space, so it does not affect the lane width at all.
This is Al Gubitosi. I had a quick question about the curb extensions. Specifically, do you have any sense for, number one, I love the curb extensions, but do you have any sense for how much parking space we lose as a result of extending the extensions as you've illustrated?
I think you may not lose any parking space at all. It's usually you can make it in the within 25 feet from the corner where parking is not allowed anyway. It discourages that parking and discourages illegal parking in those spaces. Yeah. So for instance, in this example, the space here is yellow. It's yellow curb, so you're not allowed to park there anyway. as you can notice, like how the yellow curve here is. Yep.
I think the biggest thing with the curb extensions is it doesn't allow the delivery trucks to park on the corner, which of course they do all the time, since nobody else is parked there.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is great, because when a delivery truck is there, you can't see. So.
Yeah.
And Ashna, Thomas just has a question about the truncated domes, noting that if they were put there by DOT, why are they non-compliant? And I would just answer that. So the domes pointing to the center is allowed, but not encouraged. So it's technically not illegal, but it's not a best practice. But some of the slopes are not compliant, mostly because they're older. So they're in some cases a little steeper or just not as well designed as they should be.
Yeah, and I want to add, going back to the curb extensions, that whenever they are included, they must be designed keeping the bus traffic and the truck traffics in mind. So yeah, they could be designed according to the movement of those vehicles. Okay, next is the design for the 2nd and 3rd Ave intersection. In the proposed, like in our proposal, we recommend turning these 2 roads one way with the dividing median in the center. Both of these roads would be 40 feet wide with parallel parking on one side and angled parking on the other side, and one-way bicycle lanes that connect the bicycle lane on Main Street with Hammond Avenue. With angled parking, and with this design, you could have 43 new parking spaces that will compensate for any like design because of which you have to remove 1 or 2 parking spaces along the Main Street. Curb extensions also are included at the Main Street here on the town side, as we talked about. It will reduce the 50 feet wide crossing distance here. And our last recommendation is to explore opportunities to collaborate with the private businesses that have big front parking lots to screen those parking lots using like small landscaping and greenery elements. And we'll talk about this recommendation in detail later on.
Yeah, Ashna, this is Larry Fox. I think this 2nd and 3rd Avenue recommendation is really, really excellent. It's an opportunity to take some space that we have some space and alleviate some parking, deal with the certainly mitigate the bike lane deal. And just all around, it looks like it'll be a great recommendation. Probably have to do some change management though with the residents of those couple of blocks to really talk it through, listen to them, and move it forward, because you'll probably get some pushback from some people, but this probably would be one of the more significant recommendations in here to help the situation.
Yeah, and this recommendation would also help with the driving issues in this area, as we were talking about in the walk audit, that if someone is coming from here and another vehicle is coming from here, there is a confusion in which who has the right of way, as the street like currently merges here without any signs and any guidance. So this could also help with that. And as this recommendation will have a bigger impact on motor vehicle movement, the town will work with the traffic engineer to implement them.
Great, great.
Ashna, to Mr. Fox's point, he is correct. You will get some pushback. Our house is right above the center picture where it says westbound and you have the arrow. Ours is that red roof right there. We witness every single day the discombobulation of the traffic at this point. And this is an opportunity. We've been waiting for this for a long time, because this is an opportunity for the town to pick up parking spaces and not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on purchasing property. And even though we live here, I am a big advocate of it. I would hope that my neighbors would be, and with the additional green space, I think it could work very well. And again, I agree with Mr. Fox's comments.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
If I may, this is Jerry Frieda. I'm the borough engineer.
Yes.
I see you have a note that says angled parking 33 or 20 spaces parallel parking.
Yes.
So the borough does have an opportunity to, although it would be less parking spaces, maybe less congestion and widen the travel way a little bit to make it a little safer. So there is that opportunity.
Yeah, I think there is this choice to make here, and yeah, there are pros and cons to both. Like even if we do like 20 parallel parking spaces here and 21 parallel parking spaces here, the borough would get new parking spaces overall. It won't be probably 43 new parking spaces, but you'll still get some new, like 10 or 15 new parking spaces. Yeah, so there is a choice here. Yeah.
And no, it's definitely a plus. I just wanted to point that out in case someone didn't see it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Ashna, I just want to add too, you know, these green spaces could also be designed so that they allow the municipality to pick up stormwater. I don't think we discussed this as an issue in the walk audit, but many towns need to deal with flooding, and this would allow you to design it so that these green spaces, or some of them potentially, could pick up some of the runoff from the road.
Yeah, yes, definitely. That's a good point. Thank you.
As Ann said, there's a lot of asphalt here, and turning that asphalt into a better use of space will definitely make it look a little nicer.
Yeah.
I have two questions. This is Linda Curtis. One, do I understand correctly that this removes the angled parking toward Main Street?
Yes, yeah.
South side?
Yes.
That's great. I hate that parking there. And secondly, don't we already have parallel parking on those two streets?
Yes, it has parallel parking on these two streets, but with this design, you'll get more parallel parking spaces. Currently, there are 25 parking spaces on both of these sides.
I see.
But with design, you'll get 41 parking spaces. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Actually, could we include delineating the spaces on each curb line? Because we have a big problem in this block specifically with cars parking and blocking our driveways.
Yeah.
So if those spaces are then delineated, it makes it much easier for everyone. And I think if it was part of this process, it would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
But even with the bike lane, there is parallel parking on the south side of 2nd and north side of 3rd, right?
Yes, yes.
I have another question. Do you advocate the back in to angled parking? The back in only option?
The back end only option.
In some towns where they have angled parking, you have to back into the spot, so it's safer to pull out of it.
That's a good question. Yeah. James, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we can definitely. It shouldn't change the number of spaces.
No, it doesn't change the number of spaces. I don't know which is better. I just know of towns where that's the new thing, is you have to back into angled, and just wondered if that was something you recommended or not.
Yeah, back in can definitely be safer, although in towns where it hasn't been installed before, there's always some confusion at first. So it's good to help people out because they don't really get it, especially if it's empty. But yes, it can be shown as back in as well, and it would be the same amount of spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's move forward. We still have some slides to cover. Oh, I moved too forward, too fast. Okay, yeah. So these are the recommendations for the 5th Avenue intersection that goes to the school. We recommend adding curb extensions to reduce the crossing distance for kids and adding ladder crosswalk on all sides. We also recommend exploring opportunities to screen the surrounding parking lots with like small green landscaping. And lastly, coordinating with the DOT to add a mural installation to lower vehicle speeds and increase the sense that the intersection is used by kids. At this intersection, the town could also look into installing pedestrian hybrid beacons or raised crosswalks or a raised intersection treatment if the need to improve safety by lowering speed remains. Okay, any feedback?
So I wasn't sure I got that. You mean put in bumps, speed bumps?
It's not a speed bump. It's a broader speed bump design that does not affect vehicles going at lower speeds like 15 to 20 or less than 25 miles per hour.
It's more like a speed berm, Linda.
It's referred to as a speed table. If you've ever been in Long Branch on Ocean Boulevard, you may have come across them at a couple intersections. They work very well. However, you have to handle the drainage in the intersection because you're disrupting all the drainage flow. It can be done.
There could be a variety of ways to do it. It could be a speed hump. It could be a speed table, as you said. And I think it could be a speed cushion as well. So yeah, there could be a variety of ways that the town can look into to do that. Yeah.
Knowing DOT, they're not going to be going with speed humps. I think the best option would be the table. And if we can work the drainage, that would be a real nice element, I think, for the town.
This is a major access to the elementary school, and it's very unsafe in its current configuration. This is a huge improvement.
Thank you.
Can I ask why there are curb extensions on 3 of the 4 corners and not the 4th?
Okay, that's a good question. I kind of, I think I went back and forth on putting in curb extension here. I did not put it to keep some symmetry in the geometry. But we can definitely, you could definitely install a curb extension on the 4th side as well. Yeah. Not installing this, I think aligns the traffic that's coming from this side to go on 5th Avenue better. But you could install a curb extension here as well, as it will decrease this crossing distance.
Ashna, in the chat, Lisa Lee mentioned that if any public art is installed, it's a good opportunity to work with the school as, an art project for the kids.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Also, if I could, I like your design without the extensions, because 5th Avenue is a one-way coming out, and it directs the traffic going straight to stay on the correct side of the road, because 5th Avenue on the west side is a two-way street. So I think the way you have it shown is probably the better, safer way.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's move forward. Yeah. So now we talked about the intersections, but now we'll talk about some design and recommendations pertaining to the entire corridor. We already talked about ladder crosswalks at all intersections and ADA compliant crosswalk ramps and truncated domes. Additionally, we also recommend that Main Street should have leveled and ADA compliant sidewalks all along the corridor. So no uneven pavement or non-ADA compliant slopes. We recommend that Main Street should have high quality pedestrian amenities, including shade and greenery. It should have consistently placed and properly maintained trees and tree well designs. City of Plainfield, Union County developed a streetscape design manual published in 2016 that covers design details for all public right-of-way improvements to pursue a coordinated and a consistent development moving forward. The right two images here are 2 types of tree well designs covered in this manual. And this image shows the tree well designs and trees in downtown Somerville. Main Street could also look into a standard layout, planting trees in the parking zone at regular intervals, as done in a residential street in Westchester in Pennsylvania. And this example is from downtown Houston, Texas. So this addition to the street layout could also like help in providing a unique character to the street. Any feedback or like comments? Okay. Next is we recommend incorporating bus shelter and associated amenities that will provide a safe and more accommodating space for people who take transit. One way to do so could be using bus bulbs. Bus bulbs are basically curb extensions that align the curb with the parking lane, allowing buses to stop and board the passengers without ever leaving the travel lane. But if you don't want buses to stop in the travel lane, especially because Main Street is a 2-lane road, as seen in this left example from New Brunswick, buses can stop before or after a curb extension like a bus bulb as well. These bus bulbs can provide the extra space required for adding a bus shelter and other amenities. They need to be about like 6 feet in width minimum. Yeah, here is an example of how a bus bulb can look like in front of the Riley Park. The recommendation features bus stop pavement marking here, like for more visibility and to deter pickup trucks from stopping in the bus bay for loading and unloading. The design removes 5 parking spaces to add this curb extension. And these parking spaces could be recovered in the 2nd and 3rd Avenue redesign that we talked about. It also includes a mid-block crossing that expands upon the existing mid-block connection that goes to the train station from here. Note that this bus bulb is very long because it goes till the mid-block crossing, but it does not have to be this long, and it could be like 1 bus length or even lesser than that. It will provide the space to add a bus shelter and add other amenities like bike parking, add more greenery, and add more seating spaces.
Just against Jerry Frieda, mid-block crossings are usually discouraged by DOT. So is someone on DOT? Can I make a comment on that?
It would have to be vetted by our engineering department after the town works with NJTPA to put in a problem statement. It's not impossible, but it's not often used on state roads.
Thank you.
Can I ask how many bus route, how often does a bus stop in town? I don't know. I just don't know how often.
So there's 2 buses, Route 830 and Route 317. And between the 2 of them, they come about every half an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments on these bus bulbs to add bus shelters?
A simple question is, if we chose not to consider the full bus bump, but I like the mid-block crossing element you've got on the west side. Is that something we could consider as an alternative to the bus bump on the east side?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think these are 2, we could look at them as 2 different recommendations. Yeah.
For safe traversing, this is an unusual spot here because on each end of the park you have signalized very safe intersections. I don't know if it really works to do the next one in the middle, especially with special permitting from DOT. Like I said, there's very safe access on both ends. Not to, it's just my thoughts. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot of times when there's a bus stop, it's very tempting for people if they're running late to try and run across the street. So I thought maybe that was why Ashna was doing it, was to try to provide some safety for people who might, be running across the street and get hit. And that happens a lot in many more urban cities, hopefully not in Bradley Beach. But what I like about having the bike lanes and the curbs, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this one of those streets that had a lot of speeding? And I think by having the bike lane and the curb extension, it will definitely help to slow down traffic. So that's always a good thing, especially if you want, you want to have people strolling, you're near a park. It'll kind of keep it more pleasant.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and I also want to add that if you go straight up, that gets you right to the train station. So there's definitely some temptation for people to take the most direct route. And I wonder if, as residents, you guys do see people cross there just because they're going straight. They don't want to go out of their way.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is Jerry Frieda. Honestly, most of the foot traffic is from the bakery, in my opinion. People are always running back and forth. That bakery has an awesome business. But between two signalized intersections, I'm very doubtful DOT would approve a mid-block crossway.
And Liz does note in the comments that people do cross the block constantly.
Yeah.
Would it make any sense to change the mid-park walkway to make it less attractive to run right across? Does that make sense? I mean, I agree that it looks like, well, that's the way I'm going to the train. I'm going to run across here. And if that walkway in the park wasn't straight to the sidewalk, maybe it would be less appealing, attractive. Does that make any sense at all? Okay, fine.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
They're always tempted to run across if it's easier for them, especially if it's colder or they're running late. Unfortunately, I think people just, their human nature is to run across, and they may be there, as visitors trying to catch a train from the beach or something.
No, I understand that. I'm just thinking if there were plantings that were parallel to the sidewalk on the park, and that park walkway had arched entrances to the sidewalk, it might be less of a pull to get people to cross there. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an idea, and it depends on a lot of factors. Like, I'm not sure who owns the park or who has designed it, and like, as many events also happen in this park. So if this design helps those events in any way, so but yeah, that's an idea.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to do a lot of observation because of COVID-19, right, of the team. So, so we don't have the knowledge that you might have about how big of a problem this is. And so I think that's kind of what we've been talking around. If a lot of people want to cross there based on observation, because it's going to be a challenge, making that improvement, although it definitely would provide, could provide a big improvement for getting across at that kind of natural path. But if people are not using that natural path and they're content to go to the corners, it's not a great crossing distance. I think proceeding, with the recommendations, this might be a longer term or lower priority recommendation that could be dependent on how much of a challenge it is for people to cross and how much people are making that choice to cross mid-block anyway, despite the risks and challenges. And certainly, like Linda was saying, there are things you could do if it was if there were a lot of safety problems there mid-block from people crossing, and there were risks of pedestrians being struck. or that even if that actually, you know, if that was happening and causing injuries, there are things you could do, but you know, we want to discourage things that are making changes that are going to discourage pedestrians. And so if we didn't need to kind of put a fence there or landscaping, that could be avoided. I know what you mean, Linda. It lines right up with that mid-block. And sure, if you had the money, you could, or in the time, you could rearrange things in the park to reorient the pedestrian pathways in the park if it was a big enough challenge. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of evidence from our conversation today that it's a big safety or access issue.
You know, this is Al Gubitosi again. I appreciate and I agree with the fact that we do have these signalized corners. So clearly the signals provide greater safety. I think our reality is we have a lot of people that jaywalk all the time. And what I like about these curb extensions in the middle of the block, because as Asha said, we do have greater volume for events. And when people jaywalk now, they're stepping out between parked cars. So I do like the fact that, you know, to the extent we want to create another means of access, I like the fact that the crosswalk might slow vehicles down. The extended curbs might just provide, you know, another means of cleaner access as opposed to stepping out between parked cars.
Yeah.
Liz added in the comments that from what she's seen, it's a lot of people who park and then run across the street to get to those businesses as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the feedback, and let's move forward, please. Yeah. So this recommendation is that the town should explore standardized layouts that optimize the use of the furnishings zone for providing better lighting, seating spaces, bike parking, trash and recycle cans, and other amenities. The image here depicts the recommended typical design covered in the City of Plainfield's Streetscape Design Manual. It includes trash cans and recycle bins within 20 feet of the intersection, which I think we talked about during the walk audit as well. Trees 30 to 40 feet apart, depending on their size, starting from the center of a block on both sides. And street lights centered between adjacent trees along with the seating space.
Ashna, the way those various items, the garbage and the chairs,
Yeah.
the bench, the way they're positioned, are they at risk of being hit by, you know, opening car doors? Am I looking at this correctly? Should they be set back from the street a little bit?
Yeah, I think maybe because this image is very small, there is some distance there, but it's not seen very clearly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good observation. Okay, and our last recommendation is to envision a unified look for the street where each element that we discussed about street lights, street furniture, trees, and signage contributes to the overall appearance of the street. When designed in a unified manner and laid out consistently, all of these elements could help in creating a sense of place and character. Here is an example of how it could look like. This is a rendering of the street in front of Riley Park, where the curb extension is proposed to add a bus shelter. And in the design features consistent trees, well-maintained and consistent trees with a tree belt design, more seating spaces, and bike parking.
This is Paula Gavin. I just wanted to ask if when you develop the unification strategies, you could include things like the curb extensions, everything that you've come up with that all contribute to the unified.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. We also recommend promoting creative signage designs and styles, encouraging businesses to follow certain sizes, how they're placed on the sidewalk, and help them with ideas. The left two images here are the signage design tips provided by Somerville's Business Alliance. The town could also look into more standard signage looks as depicted in this last image from the Main Street redevelopment and rehabilitation plan presentation for Orange Township in New Jersey. It recommended general guidelines, the style, illumination, and materials for their historic look. Yep. As I pointed out in the diagrams and the drawings earlier, the town could look into screening the big surface parking lots that front the sidewalks using landscaping or in any other way as done in front of the Bradley Beach Municipal Complex parking, and has also done on some intersections like this one. Okay. And this is the last recommendation. Yeah. Yes.
Are you recommending that on the previous slide, are you recommending that the landscaping, the bushes should be higher than what we currently have? I mean, really
No.
screening or just greening?
Just greening, yeah. Yeah, so like for instance, in this last image, this is a parking lot and a business here, and this is the business signage. So the town could plant some greenery here, similar to how it's done here. So just encouraging more of doing this, planting these greeneries and small shrubbery, yeah, along the sidewalk whenever there is a big front parking lot.
And whose responsibility is the landscaping that happens? Does that become a town responsibility or the business homeowner, whatever?
Yeah, I think we recommend that the Bradley Beach Business Alliance talk to and explore this opportunity with the private businesses and see how it works out. Okay. Yeah, and the last recommendation is that the town can look into opportunities to incorporate art to activate and personalize the pedestrian environment. The right image here is from Peoria in Illinois, where a student-led project focused on water conservation used sidewalk art to add color to their main street and forward their cause. In another unique example, this from the left image, the Hillsborough Downtown Partnership and the downtown business owners in Oregon supported the creation of hidden artworks on their street that becomes visible when it rains to create a unique downtown experience. And similarly, like Bradley Beach, if interested, could also look into art to add color to their sidewalk designs. One location to consider this option would be in front of those driveways, where other amenities cannot be included. So, any comments? Okay, so we are at the end of our presentation. Thank you for participating. And if you have any additional comments or suggestions that you would like to discuss right now, we have some time. You can also...
Bell just mentioned in a comment that this could reduce the uniformity and character unless it's done tastefully. I'm not sure if she's referring to the art or the previous slide. Probably the art, since it was sent at 10:56. Yes, confirms the art.
Okay.
This is Paula. I have two questions. One, when will we receive the final report? And then I have a question about the final report.
So the schedule for this project is to send you, Paula, and other members of the Bradley Beach Complete Streets team a draft of the report to review towards the end of October. And then what was this? And you had another question.
Right, exactly. I think it'd be very helpful as we do this final report to think about the implementation and who would be responsible for what. Borough, businesses, you know, the DOT, et cetera. So just being clear in our final report how we would go about implementation. Which leads me to a question I think David and I talked about yesterday, that there's a current grant out, I think from NJTPA, if I'm not mistaken, David. But I wondered how this could feed in. Does this give us sort of a leg up on that grant application? Can we use these recommendations to support our proposal?
This is Jerry Frieda. I'm aware of the grant. I've been working with Dave on it on behalf of the borough. Yes, it would be able to be used for these types of improvements. I think they were very well thought out and very well displayed for people to see and understand. I'm not sure everything that has been shown to us will be achievable, but I do believe a lot of it would be, and the grant money would cover those types of improvements. The only issue is that grant is a very high-level grant that is everyone's looking for a piece of it. You're probably looking at, you know, $2-3 million to do your whole Main Street, so you may have to do it in phases. So that's something we'd have to look at, and we'd have to plan.
Barry, are you talking about the TAP grant?
Yes.
Great. Yep. So for those who don't know, NJDOT offers through federal funding, a transportation alternatives program grant every 2 years, and it is intended for larger projects to improve non-automotive uses. So it includes stuff like streetscaping. Basically everything you saw here today would be eligible for that. And like Jerry said, these are larger grants. They tend to be $1-2 million. And a lot of municipalities in New Jersey have successfully used it for a Main Street streetscaping project that incorporates all the pedestrian improvements as well. So it's a good opportunity to apply for that. And if you don't win it, to keep applying every 2 years.
And I think, this is Paul again, I think it's very exciting. And I too feel like we've seen some amazing recommendations. And what I would urge us to do is to take a look at that proposal as phase 1, and then think about how would we supplement for phase 2, phase 3, what other strategies for generating the funding to do that. So just looking at it as a complete plan and thinking about the different alternative funding sources. But I'm so happy we're going to be ready to make that application in November.
Yeah, just one. Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ann. And Bill, certainly from DOT, chime in if we miss something, because this is your bailiwick. But the transportation alternative set aside is administered by DOT. It is done in partnership with the metropolitan planning organizations. So NJTPA would be involved as well for applications in your area. It's money for infrastructure, for construction, although I believe the last round, or perhaps the one before, DOT started providing design assistance to applicants who need it. And most applicants do take advantage of that and to get assistance from an engineering consultant to do the design, and that's kind of part of the grant process for successful applicants. So it is very competitive, but yeah, I encourage you to apply. This fits right into it, as James said.
I just wanted to point out that one way to think about it too is you have the Main Street, but you also have that portion that BTC recommended for 2nd and 3rd Street, and that in itself probably could be a project. So there might be ways, as Paula mentioned, to have this overall vision, but maybe take pieces of it, and that would be a piece that would be and potentially more in your own ability to do, because I believe those are municipal streets.
Right, and thanks, Anne, for reminding me of something else. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, since for changes to Main Street as a state road, the application could be submitted by the town, but they would need DOT and generally on board. And Bill might be able to answer that a little bit more. But so, you know, as always, making changes to a state or a county road for your town, it's a little bit more complicated than making changes to a road that's municipally owned.
And thanks, Peter. So Bill provided a link in the chat, information on that grant. So for those of you at the municipality, if you haven't attended the DOT webinar, there's another one this week on Thursday with information about applying. They also do one-on-one meetings, which are very helpful because a lot of grants lose out just because of, you know, technical issues, and you don't want to lose out on money because of a paperwork issue. And Lisa Lee, do you guys help out with municipalities who are applying or no?
I think we're more of a resource to like direct you to the people who are doing the grants. Those webinars, we were told as coordinators to definitely encourage you, if you plan to apply for the Transportation Alternative Set Aside Grant, to definitely make a private appointment with local aid to have them, you know, kind of give you tips to make your application stronger. So if you do that, I think that's a great thing. The other thing, and Bill may know more, but we're very hopeful that Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Grant will be released before the end of the year. And since you do have that portion of this project that is very close to a school, you could potentially save that part and use that part to apply for the SRTS grant when it's eventually released. Hope that helps.
I just had a question for Peter. Peter, you mentioned the state highway issue, and historically, how does Safe Streets dovetail into New Jersey DOT highway regs? Is that going to be an issue, or do they kind of mesh together pretty well?
Are you referring to the Safe Routes to School infrastructure grants, or just in general?
No, just the general state Safe Streets program. When it's utilized on a state highway, like in this situation, do they dovetail together well, or do they have conflicts along the way? I mean, we've had some issues previous with bike racks and benches and garbage cans. I believe Councilman Gubitosi alluded to it being constructed or placed in the safe way as described by the DOT. Mr. Frieda may have more on that, but I'm just wondering about the smoothness of process as we get to the design.
I don't want to say too much. I'll let Bill comment, Revere from DOT, if he wants to chime in. It can be challenging. It's good to keep in mind that the State Department of Transportation is not a monolithic entity, right? So there's departments in charge of maintaining the state roads and of permitting and allowing driveway access and considering and administering regulations regarding what's allowed adjacent to the road. And there's departments looking at safety as well. And so it can be a negotiated process to figure out what's allowable that will address the town's goals as well as the state's goals in maintaining a road that meets their federal and state design guidelines, and their goal to have a functional through traffic, as well as serving the town's needs. But in general, the DOT, when a town comes to them, will bring the right people together to work with the town to address their goals to the extent that they can.
Great, thank you, Peter.
I was going to say, I think that there's something else too that the state of New Jersey kind of brought into fruition. I think sometime in the past few years, they have the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, and the loan rate is so low right now that the other thing is, you know, it can be a lot to like compete for these grants, but you could potentially look into getting an infrastructure loan to help you, you know, implement some of the parts of this project that you may want sooner, because it's definitely true that it can take a longer process with the federal grants and all the approvals. So keep that in mind. And if you want, I'm sure you could talk to Anne or myself or any of us who are working with those to direct you towards the those other possible resources to help you bring this plan into fruition.
And this is Jerry, just to back up on that. The iBank is the source we use for your sanitary sewer rehab program that we had just completed. It is a good program. Lisa's correct. The only issue there is that you have to come in with almost a complete design beforehand, which means that the borough would be fronting the money for the design, which maybe isn't a problem, maybe it is. But yeah, all those grants, EDA also has a grant program for streetscape. There's many out there. We're looking into as many as we can.
Yeah, so in the final report, there definitely will be a section that talks about funding, but obviously you guys are already thinking about that. And I do want to mention that in addition to sending me comments by the 22nd, I will be posting later today or tomorrow an email to you, a link for where you can provide those comments. But we will also be sharing a copy of the slides that were shown today, this as a PDF. So if you're thinking about that TAP grant, you have through this presentation, a lot of the conceptual designs to help you think through that grant application. So while you may not have the report, you know, final report, you'll at least have the major components in this presentation. So I don't know, Ashna, do you have any final thoughts or?
No, that's it. Thank you for participating, and send us any of your additional comments or feedback.
All right, so it's a little after 10. I don't want to keep people longer, but feel free to email me. And as you think about this, if you have additional ideas, send them our way, and I will be sending you a link for providing comments as well as a copy of this presentation and the slides. So thanks to everyone for coming and joining us today and giving your great feedback and ideas. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.